Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Ohio. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to a post-draft episode, our first post-draft episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Iowa Joe is back from Lambeau, and I am still here in Honolulu. But we are going to recap the 2025 Packers draft class, share our thoughts on how the team did, and what we're hoping to see out of this group coming, this season and in the years after. But Joe, gotta start off. How are we doing, fearless leader? Or I know that certain things seem to have walked away from you on this trip a little bit, and we're podcasting from the seat of our pants like we usually do. But how was the trip, other than all that stuff?
Yeah, like I told it, I even I talked to a couple people that when I was coming home, doing the normal gas station stop or whatever, and I was just right outside of Green Bay, and a couple of people at the gas station were talking like, "Well, I just don't know if I could go be in that crowd. I'm always around Lambeau anyway, and I'm going to games." And I said, "It's a completely different feel than going to a game. There's way more people. This is a pretty much a once in a lifetime opportunity." Because if they're going to try to go to every city in the NFL or every city that has a team in the NFL, you're looking at maybe at 32 years before they get back to Green Bay. So I really do think Green Bay showed out for it. There were some things that they probably could have done better, but it was more for the organization than it was for the Packers themselves. And like, so you could tell that they were kind of flying by the seat of their pants on the first day, and you could tell that, let's just say, you could tell the security were volunteers for the most part, because there were times where I'll give this one. So at the end of day 3 or day 2, of course, aching, sore, and everything else, I went to find a place to sit down, and I was waiting for a friend. So I walked up and I found a bench, and I walked over there. I sat down. I was sitting down for a minute. Well, of course, my phone died, so I couldn't get a hold of that friend. So I got up to go look real quick because they were just over in a certain area. I went back to go sit down, and this little lady said, "You can't go over there." I go, "What are you talking about? I can't go over there. I was just over there 2 minutes ago." And she just kind of looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "There was nobody here. It was wide open. There's open seat over there." So I went and sat down.
What you're saying,
So it's just,
what Joe is trying to say, everyone, is that he should have just brought his uniform from work and maybe dumped
I probably would have done a better job of it. And the sad fact
straight out the
is
John Deere hat for an NFL hat, and no one would have been the wiser.
well, I worked for, the funny thing is the company they were using for event security is the same company I work for. So I could have done it anyway. If I known that was going to be the case, I probably would have just said, "Hey, I'll go up there for a few days, pay me, I'll do it." I'd be getting paid to be at Green Bay, and B, I'd be able to go to the draft every single day like I did anyway. And I wouldn't lose the money I did on all the stupid shit I had to buy.
Absolutely. And so from our point of view, and obviously we loved having your insight, on our day 2 live stream on Friday. From my point of view, I do understand what you're saying, that day 1 there was a little bit of okay, how does this all work? We have an idea. I was a little disappointed that the players that were in the green room didn't ride the bikes if they were there. I really wish that they had done that. And even if it's just the 50 feet from the green room to that mirror where they get the hat and they take the selfie in the hat kind of thing. I wish they had done that. It was still cool to see all the former Packers, Goodell, come out on the bikes and stuff, but I thought they underutilized that bit, to an extent.
And it had a lot of
Yeah.
us confused there anyway, because you had the normal draft stage where, they were announcing picks and all that stuff. and then they had a runway down to a small stage.
The one where Sorrel went on there on day 3, right? And
Yeah,
like was yeah.
so they had that all blocked off. You couldn't get to. I mean, they had it fenced off where you could get near it, but you weren't in there. So it would have made tons of sense that you just ride a bike from the stage to there with your jersey and everything else. But it is what it is. Like I said, it was a great experience. I said it during the live stream, but I'll reiterate it here. I set back a ways from it where I could at least still see what was going on and hear what was going on, but I could sit and I wasn't amongst all the group because they were crowding them in. Like, I had people tell me that when they were seeing like the overhead shots, it looked like it was just ants. And so I
The only
set back
people
a
who looked like
ways.
they had breathing room inside, like you said, the main stage area where like they actually
Yeah,
do read the picks. The only people who had breathing area were the people in the front row. Everyone else, like I know you described it on like through your posts on Twitter or Blue Sky, is that if you're at if you are claustrophobic, think you're claustrophobic, have a family history of claustrophobia, do not go in there because like yeah.
they always say elbow room. It's elbow room, or there was no elbow room. You were belly to belly, back to back, butt to belly, whatever you want to call it. You were basically on top of each other. There was no way around it. And it's funny. It made it worse in a way that there was tons of people drinking, so they were sloshing about and bouncing around as is. So just to have that. But anyway, I set back a ways, a bit of ways away. I mean, I was still in the area and I still could see everything. But anytime the crowd booed, anytime the crowd cheered, anytime I could feel it. I mean, you have where they tell you that, oh yeah, that you can sense the reaction. No, you could feel the reaction coming out of the group just because that's how many people were packed in there. And on Thursday night, they were actually turning them away from the gate because they were at full capacity. I think they finally did release the total number that they altogether it was almost 600 over
It was over
600,000
six
people
hundred
showed up for
thousand.
all 3 days.
Because day one, they
And
and in all honesty, in your point of view, do you think so? It was like 205 day one, 175 day two, and then day three was like 220 or something like 240 or something like that. I forget what day they crossed 600. Do you think the weather hindered them on Friday with in terms of the numbers, or did it just seem the vibe was a little different because like the time of day, it's not round one.
well, I will tell you the what I think it was. I think why there were so many people on Saturday is because you still had the people who had to work on Thursdays and Fridays and couldn't get that time. Because I even mentioned it to somebody else. I go, I asked the question, I go, do you think they were making it mandatory to be at work for your normal schedule on Thursday and Fridays if you lived in or around the Green Bay area? Because think about it, if everybody took that time off, there'd be nothing open. And so I just think the reason why there were more on Saturday than there were Thursday and Friday is because of that. With it starting at 6 and 7 o'clock, respectively, on each day, it was easier for people to take their families and that over on Saturday and do all that stuff. Plus, they were having more events than that on Saturday. They were having like a farmer's market, they were having food trucks in there, and then at the end of the day, they were having a Brad Paisley concert. So I think that's what drew more people over there than anything on Saturday. But 205,000 people on night one, that's like 50,000 more people than the whole population of Green Bay.
Depending on which
600, what
side you
they,
believe. Yeah, it's basically
somebody did the
60,000 if
math,
you follow
wasn't it?
the
It's like,
yeah. But
well,
no,
didn't somebody
yeah,
do the math and say it was like 600% of the population?
something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was funny. So I don't know if you, I doubt you saw some of these tweets, but there was like some people that were like, "Oh my god, the stage is set up in the parking lot of Lambeau," and oh, it's like, why would they do that? Oh, they should never have given it to Green Bay. And there
But it
wasn't just
wasn't.
Packers fans.
It wasn't. It wasn't set up actually in the parking lot. It was set up on the road. They shut down Oneida Street, and the stage was basically on the more towards the road because the green room was behind that, and it was cutting into the rec center. So yeah, it was coming into the parking lot, and you were generally in the parking lot, but the stage itself was on Oneida Street, which
And
runs
my
right
whole
in front of Lambeau.
right, the Oneida Gate and all that kind of stuff. And my whole point with that is, I'm like, what are you expecting them to do? They're not holding the draft inside of Lambeau.
Yeah.
That's a kind of liability, and that's a lawsuit waiting to happen and stuff. Like, they're not
Well,
having it
not
in.
just that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
so
go
many
ahead.
things. Oh, no, no, no. I was just saying, like, some people are like, oh, this and that, but I'm like, it's like a liability thing. There's the logistics would be weird, and also I think the sightline is better that, like, you're looking at like the facade of Lambeau than if you're like in the bowl and stuff. And also, like, you're able to include all the people that aren't in the roped off like draft announcement area. Like you said, you'd still hear it, just like you can hear the cheers if if you're just tailgating outside the stadium. But the fact that you can feel it, see it, and like, you're like still getting it in real time kind of thing, even though you were sitting by the Leap statue on Friday and stuff while we were podcasting and all. So I just think that people who were saying stuff like that, it was like super, like, why are you watching it? Like I don't even know what label to put on it. And
I,
it's like I said, for Kansas City, it was in the middle of some field, and then for Detroit, like, it was cool that it
right.
was at the 8 Mile intersection, but that's still a road. Like, I don't know what they expect. Like, this isn't like the Olympics where they're gonna build the freaking bird nest and then have it be abandoned kind of thing and all. So I I think it was great. And to the point you made about, like, oh, are they going to let all the teams host it? The explanation that I've heard from people with league sources and all is that the draft is being kept for the home cities that will probably never host a Super Bowl. So and New York is out because they've hosted the draft until 2014 or whatever it was. But that's why Pittsburgh's getting it next year. Um, that's why LA hasn't gotten it yet and stuff. And like Las Vegas got it because they
Well, I
were the new
wonder.
stadium at the time. I do think LA will get
Well,
it
then
at
how
some
did
point.
Detroit get it? Because didn't Detroit go
I
with their
think
new stadium?
Yeah, no, they don't have a new. You're right though. They did host Super Bowl 40, but yeah, that was the explanation I got, is that they were like, we're gonna let the smaller teams that won't have not or won't host a Super Bowl like get the draft kind of thing and stuff. And I do think the element of like the history at Lambeau and all that kind of stuff, that fed into it and all. And I don't think it'll take 30 years. I don't know if it'll be within 10 years, but I do think overall Green Bay did enough, learned a lot from it, that they'll get one sooner than later again. Like, I think the league was really happy. Like, I watched the NFL Network broadcast, and they were just beaming about the experience the whole time. Like, you had Eisen, Daniel Jeremiah, Charles Davis, they're all like, oh, we've all been here so many times. You feel the mystique and stuff, but they're like, the atmosphere here has been something that was just totally not unexpected, but it was greater than they hoped it would be. To, like, it's just the draft kind of thing and stuff. So that's just my two
Well,
cents
there's a
on it.
couple things I want
Yeah,
to say real quick.
go for
There's
it.
a couple things I want to say real quick. First, I want to call out Ben Albright again. You son of a bitch! I had this argument with you back when Green Bay was announced as the 2025 draft host, and you were all worried about logistics and, oh, I don't want to take a cab ride for 20 minutes just to get. You just heard what Mike Kawano said. The people who were doing the broadcast loved it. Just because you're a whiny ass bitch doesn't mean anything. Everybody else loved it. It was a great experience. Shut up. The other thing I want to say is, to go back to with your logistics, and all that, and why, and the stadium. I think one of the big things people were hoping was there was going to be places to sit, because
That
we and all that stuff by the when the draft came around. So I think they were hoping it would be in the stadium so they could actually sit in the bleachers, but there was no possible way for them to do that because they would have had to take up one whole side of the stadium for the stage. So that would have blacked out those seats. And the
Yep.
stadium only holds just under 80,000 people
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no way they would have been able to fit that many people in there. And it wouldn't have gave people the opportunity to watch it from like areas like I did.
Yes. Yes.
So there's no possible way. They did great. The weather, of course, wasn't the best for the first couple of days just because it was a little damp. It was cold. I do have some complaints about some other stuff, but I know why it happened. The prices of things were just horrible. I bought a t-shirt and a hat, a t-shirt for my mom and a hat for myself, and just those two items were $100. Uh, yeah, normally a hat is only maybe $40. Yeah, they were like $55. Uh, so it, the price, food was overpriced too. A bottle of soda pop, a king size candy bar, and a double cheeseburger cost me $30. So yeah, the prices of things were ridiculous. Again, some of the logistic things needed to be worked out a little bit better, but and the whole I think the one thing Green Bay didn't the people of Green Bay didn't think of was they announced very early on that the draft was going to be a cashless campus. So
Oh,
everything on there was by card and all that stuff. So you couldn't carry cash. Okay, so when you got driving around looking for parking spots, you know how you heard the people open up their yards and all that stuff. They doubled the prices on that. I don't know if you saw the articles and stuff about what they were charging for parking near the stadium, but they wanted cash. Well, who the hell's carrying cash because they can't use cash in the stadium? And then I got there Wednesday, checked in the hotel, and I went over to Green Bay real quick. I was staying in Appleton. I went over to Green Bay just to, see how everything was going and kind of make a plan. There were firefighters walking around passing the boot hoping to collect money, and one of them walked up to me and said, "Would you like to donate?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to donate, but I ain't got any cash on me because they told me it was a cashless event."
it
So
is what it
I
is.
think
It is what it is.
so.
But
Yeah,
overall, like I said, I'm glad that the returns seem mostly positive from what you're saying. Like you said, a lot of it is like logistic stuff that outside of the pricing of things, the logistics are like we've never had the draft before. We've accounted for a bunch of things. Seating at any large public event is always the thing that always gets bungled because it's like what you want standing area because you pack more people standing up than sitting
yeah,
down, but then it's like, okay, do we bring foldable benches for like the areas where if you're not inside the main complex area, do you set up benches, do you bring picnic tables, all that kind of stuff, like you're charging people $40 for some tater tots. You got to give them somewhere to sit and eat that stuff. So, but like I said,
and they
overall,
had some of those things more towards like the food areas, but that was
yeah,
away from the actual
right,
event.
right.
So it wouldn't have been unless you wanted to watch it on TV. But if I was going to watch it on TV, I would have stayed home. I wouldn't have paid the prices. I would have just stayed home and watched it on TV. But I'm glad I went. I'm still sore as hell. My knees are aching. My back hurts. My feet hurt. I'll probably it'll probably take me another week to recover from all of it. But that's what you get for being old and broke down like I am. But it was fun. It was great. Uh, and hopefully it will be back again soon because I think that would be a great experience. And next time we'll get Mike and Marisol and the kids up there, and they can enjoy it as well.
We'll make them run the 40 because they're in the right age range for that anyway. But just wanted to make sure that we got your thoughts on it. Like we said, we hope it's not the once in a lifetime. We hope that Green Bay gets another chance to do Like I said, it seemed like the league was very pleased with how it turned out. Even Goody had that comment. It was funny hearing him so matter of factly say, "Oh, I thought it would be a nuisance, but it turned out well." Like it was funny that he let off his post draft presser with that. But I do understand what he's saying with that, where it's like, hey man, like it's cool that it's this big event and fans and stuff, but like we're still working. We have to get to work. We do want to go home and have a life outside of work, kind of thing, But
And I
yeah,
imagine it was hard for them to get in and out of the stadium because where they had the whole draft area blocked off completely, one of the entrances to the underground parking garage for them. So, and then the other side was blocked off, but they had it open up for that kind of traffic to get in and out. But I imagine it had to be a even bigger pain for them than it was for the people just attending it.
absolutely. So glad it worked out for everyone involved, but that's enough of that. We're gonna move along with our coverage. Like we said, kudos and flowers to our fearless leader Iowa Joe for properly calling out what direction the Packers would go in round one. I will say that I did have Golden on my board. I was just so, and where I'll say I was quote unquote right is the board fell like perfectly for them to take Golden, and I'm glad that they just said, you know what, screw it, we're gonna fucking do it this year instead of trying to like be the smartest guy in the room, get too cute with it, try to like be too like overly, just trying to be, like I said, being the smartest guy in the room and stuff. I appreciate that they milked the time, tried to see if there was a trade they liked, but some people are like, "Oh, could they have moved back? Could they have done this?" The last 4 years, basically, going back to 2020 with Ayuk, they've seen the guy that potentially they liked get pulled right before they get on the clock to pick up Ayuk. Rashad Bateman the year after that.
Justin Jefferson, if you believe what they said about
Right,
it.
right. That they just couldn't get up high enough to do it, and Minnesota had the ammo to go up and get him. So yeah, like I I do get irritated when people are like, oh, like could they have? I'm like, no, like if they really, this team hasn't taken a wide receiver in 24 years or 23 years in the
23
first round.
years.
Yeah,
Remember
and
that number, 23 years.
to the point that Rich Eisen's Nito stat of the night shouting out Ernie Johnson from TNT. Rich Eisen's Nito note and stat for that pick is that happened so long ago. Matthew Golden was not born the last time when Javon Walker was drafted by the Packers. So, like I said, we both like the pick, but Joe, take your victory lap, go on about it a little bit, but like I said, I get the sentiment that we are both feeling pretty good about how the process went and what Green Bay got at that pick.
Personally, for bragging rights, I love it because it just shows that maybe I'm getting a little bit better at this draft stuff than I have been. But it always seems like every once in a while I do tend to get right. Like not last year, but the year before, I was able to nail the Van Ness and Musgrave pick. Before that, I was able to nail. I mean, this was a long time ago. I nailed the Nick Perry and Mike Daniels picks, and the Brian. My claim to fame for everything, and this isn't social media wise, but with some people I know, I called the Brian Bulaga pick 20 minutes before it happened. And somewhere around here, I still have the phone that has the text messages on it that the boss of mine texted. Was asking me, all right, well, the Packers are going to be up here pretty soon. Who are they taking? I said, Brian Bulaga, tackle out of Iowa, and that ended up happening. So, but this one, this year just had this feel about it that I know I kept joking about how it just seems right that they would do it with the Grappy and in Green Bay, but it just had a completely different feel with the way they were doing their meetings, their pre-draft meetings, and not just the top 30, but if you go back and look at some of like their Senior Bowl meetings and the combine meetings and stuff like that, they were really positioning themselves for the possibility of taking a wide receiver in the first round. I mean, it even gets down to Brian Gutekunst was the only GM in attendance for Tet McMillan's pro day. So that just shows that they were looking at all possibilities, that even if Tet McMillan falls to a place that they can take him, they're going to take him. I really circled around Golden because I know I sound like a broken record when about this, but maybe not play style or player ability, but he just feels like a Greg Jennings type to me. He's got the same size and all that, and he's got the catch ability. The stat coming off of last year was on 84 targets, he only dropped 4 passes. And I know you were talking about this during the live coverage on Friday, but look who he had thrown to him. You know, I just I I have hopes for Arch Manning just because of the legacy there, but he doesn't look like he's got the greatest of arms. Ewers definitely doesn't have the greatest of arms, and even though some of the talking heads out there like tried to talk him up as a potential first rounder, but after seeing that one pro day pass, that duck that he threw, there was no way he was gonna. That was almost Matt Flynn like throw, and so it just that didn't make sense. But uh, he didn't have the ability, and I'm going to call him out. I will call him out. You know, you've got guys like Ross Uglum and Pete Bukowski and guys like that that they didn't like Golden because he was too small and he couldn't do this. And what was the big thing that Bukowski kept talking about? That he didn't have manufactured releases, or he
Yeah.
had to have
Oh, yeah.
manufactured releases.
Both of them were saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you pointed it out, and we've talked about it. The quarterback situation sucked. I mean, Ewers was a game manager, but he couldn't throw very well. Again, Ewers has a lot of Matt Flynn in him where, they can manage a game, but if you need a deep ball out of somebody, don't look at him to do it. So, like I said, and then I made a list earlier because we've been kind of talking about it in our draft group. Here are some names of some wide receivers that Packer Nation has tried to talk themselves has wanted over the years. Jahan Dotson, 5'11", Zay Flowers, 5'9", KJ Hamler, 5'9", Tyreek Hill, 5'10", Tyler Lockett, 5'10", Marvin Mims, 5'11", DJ Moore, 5'11", Rondell Moore. There were tons of people on the Rondell Moore train. 5'7", Sky Moore, 5'10", Jalen Rager, 5'11", Jalen Waddle, 5'10". Those were all and there's still more of them out there, but those were all wide receivers that Packer Nation wanted at the time that those guys were drafted. But now all of a sudden, the guy that they do pick is just too small. How does that work?
It's purely a function of people. They all wanted Ibuka. I'm going to just say it right now. They
Well, they
wanted
wanted
Ibuka.
McMillan too. They either
McMillan
wanted
or
Mbuka or
Ibuka.
they
Yeah.
wanted, yeah.
And it is obnoxious that for so many people who have banged the oh, they should just take a receiver. What are they doing? And that's the thing, is that Golden is a really good prospect. It's not like they reached for his teammate Isaiah
On
Bond,
Did he
or
even go drafted?
I think he did. I'm not totally certain, but I think he did. But or I know that your joke is it's because he went to Iowa State, but like a Jaden Higgins, there was a lot of people who were like, I would be okay if they took Higgins and stuff in the first round, but I think it, you think it. You talked about your comp for him is Jennings, and it's not, and you're not wrong. It's not just the height and weight. His arms are slightly shorter, but Jennings actually didn't measure up as great as I remember. And it's funny because when you watch film of Jennings, you're like, he's always snagging the ball away from his frame. He was a good, strong hands catcher. That's what Golden is. And he the thing that he has, his superpower is okay, he's not the biggest receiver, but he has elite speed. You can talk about does he play to it, all this and that. You can't. The points I make about it is the quarterback sucked. You can't run with the pedal down to the floor all the time, and that's what he does really well. Is even though he didn't do all the testing at the combine, his short area burst is some of the best I've seen. His ability to in 3 steps go from a full sprint to a dead stop and breaking back towards the quarterback. He separates at the break point better than almost anyone in this draft class does. Like Shavink was saying, basically it's him and Travis Hunter in that regard. That's it in this draft class. Everyone wants the 3D printed 6 foot. They want Javon Walker. They want the guy that looks like that. That's like the 6'3", 215, has the 10 RAS and can jump out of the building, and he's gonna box defenders out. He can separate and stuff. Everyone wants their guy to look like that. The fact is in the past 20 years, the Packers' number one receiver has not looked like that except for Jordy. Jordy's the only one who's looked like that. All the other ones have. Devontae's been the tallest one at 6'1". He has. Everyone else, because it was Javon. Javon looked like he had elevated to wide receiver 1 in 2004. Then he blows his knee out in 2005. And then after that, it's Driver in the prime of his career. Then Jennings
was
took
6'1".
Yeah, or Driver's 6 foot is listed, I think. And then Jennings is 5'11". Nelson, like I said, Jordy is the only one that's like the taller height, weight, speed guy. At 6'3",
Well, James
217.
Jones was 6'2".
But he wasn't the one. Like, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying is, like, he wasn't the top of the call sheet guy. They've run out there with top of the call sheet guys. And my point that I'm making is that you don't have to be the body type is not what matters. Like, it's obviously a help when the guy can do other things, but that's the whole thing with Christian Watson's career to this point is like, yes, he was turning the corner, but he couldn't run the full route tree, and that's what held him back from being the wide receiver 1. It was, and then it turned into, okay, is he a jump ball guy? Can he out physical corners and stuff? Because he doesn't separate like that from tight man-to-man coverage. I know there's certain people in this fan base who don't want to hear it, but as much as Christian improved, he still wasn't that guy who's gonna. You're just like, on any given down, you're like, I need someone to run this slant and get 5 yards of separation so we can just throw an easy pass over the middle of the field. That's not Christian's game. His game is running away from people. And on top of it, you don't know what he's going to be when he comes back from injury at this point. So
It kind of makes me go back to my comps to MVS with him.
And like, I know some people are like, oh, you're just trying. No, we're not trying to say that to hurt feelings or like limit Watson's. Like, people forget that MVS at the end was the wide receiver 2 on this team. He was the deep threat, and the 2021 offense cratered after he got hurt and couldn't come back to play in the playoffs. That's what killed him, is that they absolutely missed his and Tunyon's field stretching ability because they just had none of it afterwards. And that's where I think people are really stupid about, like, oh, well, his 4.29, he doesn't play to it. They don't want him running only deep posts and fades. That's not his job. He's going to use that speed to separate at the break point or after the catch. That's the point of it. So I don't really give a rat's ass if he runs a 4.29 or plays at a 4.29 or a 4.39. For what he does as a route runner and a separator, that's more than enough. And that's why I really like this pick. My hesitation, people like Mafi, Shavink, our whole thing was, would they do it for that kind of guy who's, like you've preached, and we've said too, he meets the thresholds that generally matter most for him. The one that I got hung up on are, like I said, his arms are on the shorter side. They're under 31 inches. But honestly, with how this board fell, you have Derek Harmon going at 21. The edge rushers are, people can roll their eyes as much as Shamar Stewart going off the board. edge was off the table at that point. The Will Johnson injury is the one where you're kind of like, if that wasn't as true, do they go corner there, kind of thing and stuff. But otherwise, I'm so proud. Claps for Goody. He actually just said, "You know what? I know that we haven't taken wide receivers in the first round in so long, but the way this class is going, we're gonna do it this year because that is the best player on the board." And and now of course you have the people that are like, "Oh, like the cornerback room and the edge room, and what are they doing?" He flat out told you before the draft they like where they are at those positions, and to me, it proved it. Does that make them or LaFleur right? I don't know. We're gonna find out in 6 months. But for now, they did everything they told you they needed to do, and we'll get into the room after the Savion discussion, but I really like what they did at the top of this draft with regards to that.
Okay, I'm going to read some stats to you, and you tell me who this is. Height 5'11", weight 197, arm length 30 inches, hand size 9 inches, 10 yard 150 1.57, 20 yard 2.6, 40-yard dash. I'm going to leave that one out because that'll give away everything. But who is that?
Is that Greg?
That's Greg Jennings. They're the same friggin' body. Matter of fact, if you go by mock draftable, uh, Golden has 5/8 of an inch longer arms than Greg Jennings, and he ran
It
a faster 40.
The biggest pot of crock that I saw is people were like, his closest athletic comparison is Bo Melton. And I was just like, that's exactly why Goot says he doesn't freaking use RAS, is because everyone looks only at the numbers and is like, they're the same player. They're not anywhere close to the same player. If Bo Melton was anywhere near as good as Matthew Golden, they wouldn't have to draft Matthew Golden and they would have extended Bo Melton already. Like, stop being herded
And I'm
like
not
sheep
sure.
off the cliff by other people. Go watch his highlight film. You don't even have to watch his game film. Just go watch his highlight film and know. The final thing, the whole thing about, oh, he didn't beat press. That's called good coaching. You
Well,
don't take your
and
5'11" receiver and tell him, you know what? We could get you free releases so you can run against worse coverage or whatever. No, you're gonna be a man and you're gonna beat the 6'2" press corner who's got 20 pounds on you and 4 inches of reach on you because it's gonna satisfy the draft community. Like, that's the stupidest argument against the golden pick I've seen. If you watch enough of his film, he does hesitation moves. He does a lot of stuff where he's getting off the line of scrimmage against press. People who are bringing up the he needs to beat press coverage better, like, get out from whatever rock you're under and learn, like, just gain the basic principles. That's LaFleur's job, is to get this guy open. Yes, he's going to have
well,
to get
and I'm gonna
stronger and
I'm gonna
tougher and
I'm
all
gonna
that kind of stuff.
interrupt you real
Yeah.
quick. This is where I'm gonna give you tons of prop because you brought this up. I don't know if it was in our chat group or if this was actually on the live or something. But you said, how often is a college defense running press man coverage?
There are
And
like
I give you
four
tons of
guys
prop.
in there's like four guys in college who can actually do it well every year. And everyone
So
else, if you do it and your guy isn't good enough, they don't do it because Golden is gone and your guy is on the ground. So
so
yeah,
to give you your props, you're right in that because if you go back and watch college football, just like you said, there's maybe a handful of guys that can do press man without being taught press man. And so why didn't Golden beat more guys in press man? Because he was never played in press man.
like I said, I'm sorry that Sarkeesian, Golden did not take the draft community's feelings into consideration and how they structured their offense so that you could see him get pressed in press coverage against a 6'2" corner. So, like, like I said, a lot of the stuff from Packers people who are bagging on the pick, they're mad because it's not Ibuka. They didn't go up in Ted McMillan, which there was no chance in hell they were gonna do anyway.
He went higher than anybody expected.
Yeah, and it wasn't Jaden Higgins that like they just liked him so much they had to take him
We
in
didn't
round
want
one.
Cyclones anyway.
We liked one Cyclone and look what happened to him. He got bagged. But all right, like I said, we'll discuss like Golden. I'm sure we'll talk about more and more, but let's just get moving on before I'm at nighttime too, just like you are. So, second round pick, Packers go with Anthony Belton, offensive tackle from Louisville.
And this is where I kind of question stuff.
Right.
I, I
Go into
said
it.
this
Go into
on,
it.
I kind of said this on the live when I was able to join, that I don't understand why they continuously are trying to push Rasheed Walker out the door. I mean, I understand he's in a contract year, but last year they drafted Jordan Morgan, and they all said that he's in to compete for left tackle. Walker went out. He had some struggles during the first part, but then he settled in and became basically a lockdown tackle. This year they're taking Anthony Belton, who is a mountain of a man, 6'6", 336. I just and I know Brian Maffey, and I kind of agree with him after looking at some things on Belton. I think he fits more the right tackle position than he does anything. He reminds me of Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, that's now with the Bears from a couple years ago, where I don't know if he's got the ability to be a left tackle. He might be able to play guard, but I think his best position is going to be right tackle. If that's the case, what are you going to do with Zach Tom? Are you pushing out Elton Jenkins and are you going to have Tom as your center? Well, if you're pushing out Jenkins, why? Then why did you resign him to the massive contract that you did? Okay, so you're not going to do that. Are you going to put him at guard? I don't think Tom is that great of a guard. So I don't think you can put Zach Tom as a guard. I know they say that he can play all five positions, but when he was put in at guard, you could tell he was okay at it, but he definitely was not comfortable as a guard.
He just doesn't have the
So
mass. He just doesn't have the mass or ability to like really move body. He's even at this point with 4 years in now, he'd be more of a speed bump at especially in the run game than he would be effective. It would be like you're saying, it would be a waste of him to play him at guard at this point.
yes.
So
And so are you putting Belton at guard? If you're putting Belton at guard, then that means Sean Ryan is expendable. But if you're putting Belton at guard, what are you doing with Jordan Morgan? He's taking Rasheed's spot. Rasheed is a known quantity. We don't know what Morgan can do at left tackle. So I know that they get paid to do what they're doing and they have a plan on things, but it just confuses the hell out of me. Plus, Belton's already 24 years old. So it doesn't make sense for him to ride the pine at 24 years old. Even Elton was drafted at 24 in the second round, and he was at least starting to rotate into the starting job his rookie year, and then took over the full-time job when Lane Taylor got hurt. So I'm kind of confused at what the goal is right now. I understand that they want to put more mass. They want to rely on the run game a little bit more. So you need the massive road graders like the good old days and whatever. But it's I don't understand what's going on here.
yeah, that's something that Mafia and I kept going on. Like, and that's the thing is like people are like, oh, you just saying that because you don't like the player. Mafia and I both like Anthony Belton as a draft prospect. It's just what you're saying. He's a prospect that we never thought Green Bay would take because what has been Green Bay's body type? It's been these 310, maybe 320 college left tackles who can move their feet, mirror in pass protection, and with some technique work, we can develop them into good run blockers. You get a sit in, a Lang, Lindsley kind of thing and stuff. But and like you said, maybe it is a philosophical shift, but at the same time, I and that's the thing, that the part of it that I don't get either is like, you didn't define a role for Morgan last offseason, and now you're like trying to force him to play left tackle, or at least that's what you've been telling us. And like I said, there was a lot of truth verification coming out of this draft based on what they did and didn't do with the class. So, are they looking to be a more powerful group? Are they gonna put Belton in at guard? But and not to say you don't get the best players you can get, but you just gave Aaron Banks a shit ton of money to be a guard. And like you said, Ryan made some real strides at right guard last year. I know the rumors are that for whatever reason, the team does not want to put the future in Rasheed Walker's hands, whether that they think he's hit his ceiling, they don't like his personality, whatever. That's above whatever. That's above what we're privy to know. So whatever on that side, but it, like you said, I'm holding my water on this one because, like I said, I do like Belton. I did really like Belton in the process. My thing is, okay, if you're saying that you have this plan, you're gonna do all this stuff with your O line, I don't want to see any more cross training with a bunch of these guys. One of Morgan, and so obviously, like you said, they have a starting line already. That from they have a good starting five already. With it, from left to right, it's Walker, Banks, Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. But behind that, I don't want to see you wasting shit reps on cross training Morgan and Belton at different position. They can switch between like sides of the line at guard and tackle, but it's like, based on what we've heard, Jordan Morgan, you're playing left tackle, and your only job is to beat Rasheed Walker out for the job. And Belton, your job is to get snaps by the end of this season over Sean Ryan, who was a good player last year. And if they don't do that in preseason, like if they keep flip flopping Morgan and Belton, or like Morgan moves all over the offensive line over the course of the 3 preseason games, I'm gonna have a lot more problems with it. But if they come out and they're just like, okay, the starting O line is not playing, and like the preseason O line is like Jordan Morgan at left tackle, Telford or Donovan Jennings at left guard, Jacob Monk at center, Belton at right guard, and I don't know, Glover at right tackle, or like you put someone else at right guard and you let Belton play right tackle, fine. Like if they I don't even need to see them play like super well, but as long as they look decent at times and don't look just like totally overmatched, I'll be fine with it, because I'll be like, okay, they have a plan and they're like sticking to it. But I know that's something that you and I had a problem where we're like, you can't draft this guy and be like, we like the player, but we don't know where he's gonna play.
And I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
if all you wanted was a swing tackle, why did you spend a first round pick on a swing tackle? I don't get spending a first round pick on Jordan Morgan if all you're wanting is a swing tackle. And then you threw out the names. Jordan Morgan, or not Morgan, Jacob Monk, Travis Glover. I understand Glover was a later round pick, but I think he has the ability, if he just works on some things, to be a guy that could be a swing tackle. I think he could play both tackle positions and be serviceable if called upon. Last year was rough. They tried to put him as a guard. He's definitely not a guard. He is a tackle. He is strictly a tackle. Just leave him at tackle. But now you bring in Belton, and I agree with you and all that. I'm not against Belton. I'm completely fine with Belton. It's not making sense with the other moves that they have been making. Last year's draft, off season, off season acquisitions. Why did you bring in Banks if you're going to draft all these offensive linemen? I'm just confused about it. But you look at it, Travis Glover is basically the same style of player as Belton. He's the same size, and he's very similar. He's just a raw prospect. I'm so confused at the whole pick. And it's not to say it's a bad pick. It's just a very confusing pick.
Right. And before we get rambling on and on about this one, like I said, we want to see where it goes with this. Like I said, if they're just like you're the right guard on the preseason team because Sean Ryan's not playing in preseason, great. Like, or even if they're like you're the tackle and Morgan's the guard, whatever. Just define the role and like let him play it out. Like I said, obviously we don't want him to see him suck in that position. We would like to see him, handle his business. It doesn't have to be. He's not gonna be refined, but like, okay, like that's the vision. They're gonna be bigger up front. They're gonna be more road graders and all that kind of stuff. Fine, that's totally fine. But enough of the like. We want versatility. We want multifaceted players who can do many things. Like, no, you got to start putting guys in roles because you're at the point where Tom's going to get signed to a mega deal. There's a decent chance this is Elton Jenkins' last season in Green Bay because of what his cap number is next year and the kind of guys they've drafted around him and stuff. So,
And that
like,
just goes back to, if you wanted rid of Jenkins, why did you offer, give him that big ass contract?
right. So, yeah, like I said, we'll table this one for now. We'll revisit it come August, late August, early September when OTAs are happening, training
We
practice
start
reports,
getting
and
the
yeah,
depth
yeah, yeah,
chart.
exactly. So we'll hold our sharpest bars for that point.
and
Third,
and I just want
yeah.
to put the disclaimer in there. This isn't us grading the draft.
No, no,
We're
no,
not going
no.
to give grades on this. This is just us talking about our opinions on these picks.
Yep. So what's it? So third round, like I said, I did love this, and this is something that you and I discussed. Mafi discussed it with us. They doubled down on receiver on in the first 2 days of the draft, and uh, I
I
know
just
all the
wish it
jokes
was a different guy.
are me. I'm a guy was always like I'm there with Savion. I can dig it. So they go with Savion Williams and big guy out of TCU. The jokes write themselves about what this means for a certain receiver
I
entering the last
I
year
think
of his
somebody needs to
contract.
do a welfare check on Tazeen, because he's got to. I don't know what's going on with him, but yeah,
So this is your classic boom or bust, low floor, high ceiling. And when I say low floor as a receiver, low floor, they're gonna find like we joke. The joke is that Gutekunst will up talk nicely about his draft picks till the day that they're free agents at the end of their rookie deal, and then it's like, oh yeah, it didn't work out, or oh that was disappointing that we couldn't get a long term player out of that guy and stuff. But at the very least, you're gonna get a this is rookie Christian Watson. He's going to run end arounds. You can line him up in the backfield. He can return kickoffs. And you can just say, Savion, you're 6'4" and you run a 4.48. Go stretch the field for us. And the one thing that I do want to stress to Packers fans is do not helmet scout. Because if this guy played for Wisconsin, you guys would be juicing all over this
no
pick.
shit.
Because, oh my God, we took the highly athletic, tall guy from Wisconsin, and you would be talking about his highlights as opposed to, I can't believe they drafted Cordarrelle Patterson, or, oh, he's just another disappointing TCU receiver, or, oh, this and oh, that. Like, have some shame, have some dignity. Like, I do agree. If you like a specific different player, that's fine. I totally understand that point. Fully admit I am saying this as someone who was totally comfortable taking Savion Williams in this draft. So I see the upside. I admit that there are pitfalls with him hitting his ceiling, but if they use the full runway of his rookie contract like they have with Watson, there is a really good football player and receiver in there if he can get to his potential.
He scares me. And you threw out the name, and I don't usually like throwing out comps until after we've seen the guy play and stuff like that. Then I can do all that. But with the way and this isn't against TCU. I don't helmet scout. I'm a homer. I will admit that if it's an Iowa guy, I love the guy no matter what, whatever. I'm a Homer guy. I do give you guys shit about being Michigan fans or Badger fans or whatever. But it
It's human
really
nature. Yeah.
it's good natured with that, and I'm an asshole, so get over it. I I worry about it because how he was used. Now you did tell me something that I didn't know, and this is because I don't really follow TCU too much. That he really didn't have quarterback there, so that kind of makes sense with how they used him. But they used him as a gadget guy. He wasn't really the guy to go out there and be a route runner. He was the guy to do the end arounds. He was the guy to do the wildcat. So immediately it jumped off tape to me as a Cordero Patterson type player, where he wasn't a good receiver. So to use his athletic ability, they put him at a position to give him a chance to thrive. I didn't know about the quarterback, so that makes a little bit of sense. So that gives me a little bit more hope to it. I'm not overly. Third round is fine, but it was the guys that were talking about taking Savion Williams in the first round that were driving me bonkers.
Okay, even for me, that was too rich for my blood. So no, I
So,
agree with you there.
but I have hopes for him. I'm hoping, but this also brings up a question, and I know we had this discussion in one of our group chats, and I'm going to call you out. I don't care, JJ Lehay. It does make me question the signing of Mecole Hardman right now. And it's not because Mecole is going to be was brought in to be a star wide receiver, number one wide receiver, whatever. I viewed McCole as being the guy who they were going to try using in the Christian Watson for front until Watson made it back as the stretch the field type of guy, and also the guy that put on returns, punt return, kick return, and stuff like that. Okay, you bring in Golden. Golden's going to be your do everything wide receiver. He's going to run the routes. He's going to run the deep passes. He's going to run the bubbles. He's going to do everything. You know, he's your. If things work out with him, he's your number one receiver no matter what. Cole was going to be your gadget guy, kind of in the mold of a Jaden Reed right now. But he was the vet presence that has been on Super Bowl caliber teams, have been on Super Bowl winning teams. So the and then he was going to do the returning. Well, now you drafted Savion Williams. Savion, I think, in his rookie year is going to be used as the gadget guy. He's going to be used on the end arounds. He's going to be used in wildcat formation type formations. He's going to be used as screen guy, but he's also a returner. So if he's going to be doing the returning and be the gadget type guy when Jaden Reed's not on the field, what's McCole here for? Why sign him? Let him have a chance somewhere else. Let him have a shot at it somewhere else. So so again, I'm not against the pick. We had talked about it. I said they're probably going to double down on wide receiver. There were a few other guys that we had talked about that we kind of wish that they would have went towards, but they went with Savion Williams. It is what it is. But now it just kind of questions about what. Another one is Bo Melton. They've been high on Bo Melton for the last few years. What's his use now?
And
Because
to
now
me,
you've got Savion. Now
yeah.
you got.
My whole thing, like I said, with Melton is they were hoping that they could develop him into more of a route runner, a little more useful. And look, he's a guy that's like, oh yeah, at the end he was an undrafted free agent for a reason, kind of thing. Like the Miko one, I do agree with you to an extent, but at the same time, they had to sign someone to take if the idea is to maximize Jaden Reed, Dobbs, Wicks, whatever draft picks you got, you had to find someone who was going to be the jet sweep guy, the gadget guy, all that kind of because Reed was that guy, and there was a lot of people that was like, oh, like they just use Reed on jet sweeps, and then if they don't, they're throwing it to him, kind of thing, which is totally an over exaggeration. But they had to get that guy. It was insurance, and Hardman's deal is like,
Oh, it's bare
yeah,
minimum. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
basically
And
league
they can cut
minimum.
him. I think they can cut him for nothing. So it's
But I
It's
look
yeah.
more on his side of things where if I knew that you were going to do all this stuff, then I wouldn't have signed with you. I would have signed with somebody else.
I well, and then the way that I would look at it is they still don't have a punt returner. Like I don't think they're going to use Golden on punt returns. I'm done with Jaden Reed as the punt returner. Like
Avion.
no, as much as I like him, he's a kick returner. I don't think he's a punt returner. You can let him get some reps there. I wouldn't hate it, but I think and so we'll get into like a little bit into the room as it comes out of camp. So like I said, these two draft picks, they as much as people are like, oh, like who's affected, making jokes about Dontavian Wicks, his comment. Look, I don't. I thought that people who were saying that about Wicks, like making comments about, like kind of retweeting Josh Jacobs saying like, oh yeah, we need a wide receiver one. I'm sorry. Do you want Wicks or anyone on the roster to just be like, oh yeah, we need a wide receiver one? No! You want every one of those guys in that room to have the fuck you attitude to say, no, I am going to be that guy. So I thought anyone who made comments about that were stupid. I'm sorry, you're stupid for having that mentality about, oh, Wicks is so sour about like his standing with the team. No, like everyone I was like, oh, but Jordy is the exception of exceptions, not the rule. Every great wide receiver has an ego. You cannot be that apex top of the call sheet guy, except for Jordy apparently, and be just an all around nice guy. Like it just doesn't work that way. You know, that's why Greg Jennings kind of went off the rails after he left Green Bay. Javon didn't like how everything was handled after he blew his knee out and stuff like that in 2005. These guys, you have to understand that these guys have to have a specific mentality if you're going to not just survive, but be really good as a top wide receiver in this league. But going back to the room, they're keeping these two guys. They would have to commit murder to not make the opening roster. Like they're not cutting a day two. They're keeping Golden no matter what. And for the people that are like, oh, about Saban, they're not cutting a day two guy no matter how bad he looks in camp, unless, like he said, unless he like runs kids over in the street or something like
Well,
that. Like,
what was the last one that they drafted? Was it Carl Bradford?
no, he
That
was
was like
a
a third or
round five.
fourth round pick.
I think he was a fourth. So even then, he's a day three guy. So yeah, they're both making the team. They're both making the team this year. And then after that, Watson's not going to be back for training camp. It's just not. The fact that it's not just like he might have had a slight chance if it was just his ACL, but the report is that ACL plus other damage did it the first week of January. I'm sorry, Thanksgiving is the earliest I'm expecting him back this season. And even if he was back in to open the season, he's gonna be dragging that leg around. Like
Hell yeah,
it's
he
just,
is. I'm
like
still dragging mine around.
so he's off the table. Like he's on pup. He doesn't exist for this conversation right now. So after that, whether they keep 5 or 6 receivers. I think they're keeping 6 because they don't have a fullback. You can quibble about how many running backs they're going to keep, and they're really only going to keep like 3 tight ends anyway. So they have spots for a 6th receiver. So after the 2 draft picks, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks. And then those 3 guys, Heath, Melton, and Hardman, they're battling for a spot that probably is there, but may not be there depending on the
I'm
rest
going
of
to
the
disagree
roster.
with you. I think even Wicks is on the hot seat.
I could see it. I really could see it too. I maintain that I was really positive on what we saw from him down the backstretch, but I'll agree with you. He should play this preseason. Like you need to do whatever it
More than
is.
one play.
Yeah, you need to do everything to prove like all the shit from last year is behind me. There's a new Dontavian Wicks. There's a new pro Dontavian Wicks. The high hopes you had on me at the end of my rookie year, you're getting the evolved form of that guy, kind of thing. So I I'll agree with you. It's not like a definitive lock like the 2 draft picks making it, but I still think it's like 70%, 80% he's going to be on the roster this season. Unless, like I said, if there's any hint of like all the issues he had last year are popping up again, they might cut the cord and move on, kind of thing. Because you've got to get guys in who are going to do the thing. But
We probably should keep going because
yeah,
we're gonna have a long episode here.
so fourth round, Baron Sorrell gets picked. One of the coolest moments of the draft because the story comes out that he's been there since Wednesday. Didn't get picked when he didn't get picked on day two. They're like, "What do you want to do? Do you want to go home or do you want to stay?" And he's like, "No, you know what? I'm staying. I got a really good feeling that I'm going to get picked." Group picks him in round four. He gets his 15 minutes of fame. And like you said, like one of the few times that they really.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Use that stage setup out in the crowd to like really just let the fans like reach out and touch their new draft pick kind of thing and stuff. So I like that side of it was really cool. But the player is a really good football player too. And they, Goot said that they really like the guys they have in their room, but I do think this speaks to they just like the receiver room, they want to turn the bottom of that position group. They like the top three of Rashawn, Lucas, Inagbare, but it's like, all right, Mosby and Cox, like you're gonna show us something because we just brought in this guy and the guy we're picking after him who are gonna come for your position. So, what did you think of the Sorrell pick?
Honestly, and I'm going to be completely truthful, I don't know much about him. It was a good story. It had me confused at the moment because I was in the concourse and I was watching it on the screen, and I was like, "What the hell's? Why is Goodell coming out on stage?" And then it got me confused. Like, well, I don't remember this guy being talked about as a first round pick. Why was he? Why why was he in the green room? Usually that's reserved for invites for the first round. But the emotion that he showed, the what's the word, the
Gravitas?
appreciation,
Oh yeah.
the appreciation of being drafted by the Packers. I thought he was going to knock the tunnel down when he was pounding on the G after getting drafted. It's a good situation. I knew that they were going to go defensive line at some point, just because you've got to have bodies in that room. And with this we're now in the fourth round and we're finally taking a defensive player. It had me wondering if they were going to move Lucas into the interior defensive line instead of having him as an edge rusher, because if you think about it, there's not much there for the Packers. Kenny Clark, Carl Brooks, and Kobe Wooden, who is a tweener. He's more of an edge rusher than he is an inside guy. That's about it. They lost Slayton. There's probably some practice squad guys or whatever, future contracts guys. So they needed something. This guy, I'm not sure. They have him listed as DL. Do you think he's going to be more of an edge, or is he going to be an interior guy?
I think he's going to be more of an edge. I just don't think he has he doesn't have the frame to bulk up to play on the interior. He's build wise, he's built like Inagbare, just with his arms are an inch shorter basically. But he has a lot more bend than the guys on the roster do. I like that they've added some versatility to the guys in that edge room. He does play the run well, even though he doesn't have the arm length that they generally take in their edge rushers. But the pass rush production, and you watch his film, he does, from a technicality standpoint, play the position. He plays sturdy like they like their edges to, and the the plays where he flashes on film are really, really exciting. Just yeah, and some people are going to say like, with him and the next pick that they're breaking their thresholds. No, they've stuck to the thresholds day one, day two, and they've allowed guys who they really like their film but don't measure up in one or two ways. They're like, okay, we're in day three. Now we're gonna like take guys that were like they're gonna contribute to the football team. Mike Daniels, as you said, he's shorter, lighter, shorter armed than they usually like a defensive tackle, but they're like, this dude is just a game wrecker on film. We're gonna get him in the 5th round, and he's just gonna kick all kinds of ass for us. My end, motorcycle outside. um, but
Some bitch.
same idea. Like that's the same idea where what you're getting with Sorrell is like he doesn't totally measure up the whole way, but like weight wise, height wise, his athleticism, he does in those areas. So it's really just the arm length that he's a little short on arm length. But like I said, the film speaks for itself, and I do expect him to have a like more of a you're a pass rusher early on. You're gonna come in, spell Lucas, Rashawn, and stuff like that. But he's a guy that's gonna play really hard. He's gonna practice hard, and all the kind of stuff you want out of your day three picks.
And according to this, he ran a 4.68 40. So I mean,
Yeah.
that gives him a little bit more speed there on the edge.
Yeah,
So that's kind of what they need as a speed rusher.
yeah. And I know you were kind of alluding to it, like, oh, do they change his positions? I thought they were going to potentially use him as a stand-up linebacker every now and then, until they took the next guy in Colin Oliver in the 5th round, who is I know you mentioned his name earlier, but like he's a much better football player and athlete than Carl Bradford was. Where Bradford was like a small edge, but he had highlights on film, but it was kind of like, okay, is he actually an NFL athlete? And he turned out he wasn't. Oliver is, and so much so that he's a really good explosive athlete as a defensive end, but. And I know that Milt Hendrickson said that the expectation early on is for Oliver
Oh God.
and Sorrell to play defensive end.
I was just looking at mock draftables, and one of the profiles that he links up with mock draftables is Ty Summers.
And that's because of his size. Like
I know.
yeah. And so but honestly the way that he plays, this is and from the ground up, I like bendy speed edge rushers over power rushers. I like seeing guys who can get under an offensive tackle, win the corner, get to the quarterback. Green Bay doesn't really have those guys outside of like whatever. No, like they just don't. Like Cooper and Quay are the best guys, and they're not even edge rushers on the roster. So I do think eventually you're going to see Oliver take some Sam linebacker snaps, but for now they're just hoping to get pressure. And Oliver and Sorrell, they can bring the heat on quarterbacks.
Do you remember what he was called as? They have him listed on the site as a DL, but I swore they listed him as a linebacker.
So this was one, and I tweeted about it. I was saying it in a couple of our group chats. Like it was one of the weirdest ones because the NFL Network broadcast listed him as a defensive end. The team site listed him as a defensive end, but the fan who read the card, clearly said linebacker, Oklahoma State. So I do think there's like Green Bay is usually pretty good about like telling their like cards, because I mean like when they drafted Rashawn, they were like linebacker Michigan kind of thing, and I think even Lucas, they were like edge rusher.
There is one that the same thing happened with, and that's Zach Tom. When Zach
That's
Tom
true.
was drafted, they announced him as a center. So it could be the same situation.
Very
But I don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
Oliver is another one that I don't quite know a lot about. It does look like, to full extent of what you were just saying, that he has an athletic profile. I do use the disclaimer, and I know we had a discussion about this in our group chat because some certain people were trying to say bad things about certain picks because of mock draftables. But all mock draftable does is take the testings and match them up to see what they ranked with the other players. And his highest to the 99%. His comparison is with Leo Chanel down in Kansas City, former Badger. So this is another one, like you said, with Savion, that if he was wearing Badger colors and Badger emblem and all that, he would be everybody's favorite pick. But we've talked about it. They do need depth at linebacker. They did resign McDuffie. The news is that Goody has said that he's trying to find a way to retain both Quay and Devontae Wyatt. I forgot to mention him as a defensive lineman. We've got him too. But they're trying, whether it's going to be the 5th-year option or they try to do like they did with Jordan Love and give him kind of an extension that covers the 5th-year option but doesn't pay him a guarantee with it. So, it is what it is. And we probably won't get to it because we're running long, so we got a few more picks to go through. But one of their UDFA signings is another guy that could be a potential McDuffie replacement, and that's the kid out that's got the long ass name out of Kentucky.
But yeah, so like we said, we had to restack the defensive line room, and Goody continued to do that with the 6th-round pick, which was Warren Brinson. Goody couldn't resist scratching the Georgia itch. He goes back to Georgia. We'll just lightly touch on. Not only did he draft Brinson, but he signed the guy who started at nose tackle next to him as an undrafted free agent. But Swinson is a. It'll be interesting. I'm curious to see where he's going to play now, since that they signed Nazir. Stackhouse, because I was thinking that Swinson was going to get the chance to learn behind Kenny, play the one technique, but now I'm kind of curious, does he get trained to be the early down 3 technique and whatever? But big athletic kid. The one thing you do kind of not question, but that you kind of flag a little bit is he's 6'5" as a defensive tackle. How's his pad level going to be and stuff, but Slayton fought that for his time in Green Bay, but he's a trimmer 315 than Slayton at 330 listed, and he's got the longer arms and stuff, and he's not one of the stalwarts from that Georgia defense, but strong base, sets, he can stack double teams, he has some push pull moves, which is what Kenny uses to get to the quarterback, and I just like the upside swing here. Like I said, this is another one of those take athletes and teach them to football late on day 3. But how did you feel about the Swinson pick?
Again, kind of going back to the Sorrell pick, you knew that they were going to have to take somebody on the defensive line. They obviously love Georgia guys, and I think because they doubled down on the Texas guys, they definitely had to go in and get a Georgia guy to kind of balance things out or whatever. I do think he fits kind of the Kenny mold. But again, looking at mock draftable, if you hit the athlete button instead of using the interior defensive line, his testing all compared to athletic wise, Derek Harmon and Zach Tom. Those are his 2 comps when it comes to pure athlete. So, not saying that they're the same players or whatever. Like I said with the disclaimer, it's just comparisons of their testing. But what can you say? 6th-round pick. You don't expect much, but this is where you try to find your diamonds in the rough.
Exactly. And like I said, it's all gonna come down, and we'll get to this when we get to our preseason, roster final 53 projections and stuff. But he's really only got to beat out
Kobe
Wooden at this point, and even for that, he might not have to beat him out to make the roster. They might keep, because realistically, out of guys that they've drafted, out of guys they've drafted on this roster, there's only 5 of them. It's Kenny, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, and now Swinson. That's the 5 defensive tackles on this roster that they've drafted, they don't have like a free agent signing or anything like that. There's no like Miko Hardman equivalent or Nate Hobbs equivalent from free agency. So, you know, I could see them keeping 5 defensive tackles, especially because they're still technically light on linebackers at this point. Just to keep it moving along, 7th round, they had 2 picks. They finally took a cornerback, Micah Robinson, and offensive lineman John Williams. But we'll stick with the defensive side of the ball. Robinson, thoughts?
It's not the Tulane corner that Brian Maffey was expecting. But from what I understand of it, whereas the one that Brian wanted was more of a slot guy, this guy figures in to be more of a boundary guy, if I understand it right. I know Maffey threw out the comp of James Charles for him. I liked James Charles. I wish he would have worked out a little bit more because he had the ability. I don't know if it was size wise or whatever that kind of hurt him or how the Packers used him, but I know, and I got to give a shout out to friend of show Tom Grossi. This was the pick that they had let him announce. And it's kind of funny that I don't think anybody had any kind of information on him because if you went onto the draft website, they didn't even have a profile pic for him. So I feel sorry for the guy, but it's kind of weird that they waited so late to take a corner. And I know I keep saying that we're going long, so we got to kind of cut things short a little bit, but I still believe Jair is going to be on roster for 2025. 2026 will be a different story, and they can revisit the position then. But again, and this one, Monty was saying, well, I still figure that Jair is not going to be on the roster. You went through the draft. They waited till the 7th round to take a corner. That tells me that. And Goody came out and said, or not Goody, LaFleur said that Jair did the online portion of team meetings. So that shows that Jair is still part of the Packers for now. So corner wise, I wish they would have took one a little bit sooner. This honestly could, and this could be a pick that maybe, I was going to call him Pettin because that's what he reminds me of. But Bisaccia could have said, hey, I think that guy will be a solid special teamer. Let's take him. Let me work with him.
Yeah, I can see some of that in this pick as well. Yeah, it's hard to get overexcited, but they've said what they said. Goot's quote about the cornerback room was, "We just need bodies in the room," and they seem to really like the guys they've got. Even if you take Jair off the table, they like their top 3 of Nixon, Hobbs, and Valentine. I'm assuming they still have hopes for Kalen King becoming some sort of contributor. They have Kamal Haddon that they kept on the practice squad and called him up multiple times during the season. And we'll just see if Robinson can fight his way into the room. And then to round it off, John Williams from Cincinnati. I missed.
Now, I wasn't sure about this pick because last time I knew John Williams was like 90 years old, and he was more of a music composer than a football player. I don't know if this was like a pity pick or what. And not saying against anything John Williams. I'm a Star Wars fan, Indiana Jones fan. I love the music. But, I don't know how he's going to hold up as a football player at this age.
But yeah, another one of those. They like to take those late developmental day 3 offensive linemen. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this one except for he's another like bigger offensive tackle. So there's been some conversation. Does he actually stay on the outside? Does he come inside to guard? But I'm less concerned about a round 7 offensive lineman pick. I just look at this. Can you beat out Travis Glover? Can you beat out one of the, a Telfort kind of thing for one of those, the 8th, 9th, 10th offensive lineman spots on the roster? So find out. And who knows? He may be starting in another year. If he follows the Rasheed Walker trend. So that's a wrap. Overall, just your thoughts overall on the class, Joe. So we could, like you said, we can move this one along and put a bow on it.
Overall, I have a couple of questions, but generally I like it. Obviously, I'm going to rave about the first round pick for a long time, and that means in next year it's got to be definitely a tight end in the first round to kind of break that one, or maybe in 5 years it have to be a tight end to make it a full 30 years since they took a tight end in the first round. But overall, I feel good about it. Obviously Goody and LaFleur and those guys have a plan in place. It also makes you remember how they had to structure the hierarchy of things at Green Bay, where Mark Murphy oversaw everything. Well, now that Mark Murphy's officially retired, it makes me wonder if this was a Gutekunst just went with whatever he wanted to go with. There was no, hey, can I do this? Hey, can I do this? This was just fully a Gutekunst LaFleur type thing, and there was no answer to anybody. And I did love Goody's little joke that Mark Murphy went rogue on
That
making the
was
pick.
funny.
That was pretty funny. So but overall, feeling good. I like what I see. I'm looking for. It makes me mad that we have to wait so long between the end of the draft and the beginning of the football season, because now it just makes me want to see what's going to happen. Although I am going to yell at Matthew Golden. I love you, man. You proved me right. It's a great pick. I look forward to what you're doing. Why 22? It made it so hard to try making a jersey swap photo for you. You should have either stuck with 81 or went with the Javon Walker number of 84, but not 22.
And on the other side of the spectrum, I like it. I'm with it. Get weird with it. Overall, my whole thing is I'm like, some people just they got so wound up about. And I'm not saying you're one of them. But you got other people who are like, oh my god, what's he doing? Like, this is the worst thing since whatever. So I'm in the same position. There's some, like I said, there's some questions we want to see answered, particularly with Belton and by Ty Morgan from last year. Last year's first round pick. We want to see how that gets how their positions get ironed out at this point. But otherwise, I think they short up the positions they really needed to, or at least openly stated that they were looking to shore up. But also, the way this draft class shook out, it really opens the door for second year guys like Marshawn Lloyd, Tyron Hopper, even Bullard, Evan Williams, and Kitan Oladapo to like step into roles and like really make a second year leap and just like set their place on the roster in Penn. Like, not like we got you penciled in as the fifth safety, but we'll see what happens. Kind of like no, like I do want to see those guys go out and like really establish themselves. But Joe, anything else on your mind, or shall we just turn the
We're at
page on the
about an hour and a
2025
half, so
NFL
I think we just need to wrap her up and call her good.
So for Iowa Joe and I'm Mike Kawano, we want to thank you for joining us for our 2025 draft recap episode. Please check out the website. Our authors are putting out a lot of great content, especially that the draft is the thing that we've been waiting all off season for. Check that out, ohanapackers.org. Check us out on our social medias, at Ohana Packers on Twitter. You can find the two of us by our names on Blue Sky. We don't have a Blue Sky account for the site and podcast yet, so just come follow one of us on there. Instagram at Ohana Packers Edition. Facebook, search Ohana Packers Edition. Please support the shop on the website, buy merch so that Joe can replace his earbuds, his keyboard, all the things that seem to have walked off into the great beyond while he was up at the draft. But we thank you for joining us. The four of you that sat in, True North Packer fan, thank you for sitting through the whole of the day two live stream. No matter how many of you followed that, if any of you watched the replay of it. We appreciate you for taking the time, the 5-hour time, to hear me and Mafi and Joe rant on and on about the picks. Joe talk about the environment at the draft. We thank you so much. But until next time, go Pack Go and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for be up, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.